King Solomon is known as the wisest man who ever lived, blessed by God with unparalleled wisdom, astounding wealth, and immense power. However, Solomon's story did not end at the pinnacle of glory, but in despair, repentance, and spiritual ruin. Throughout his life, he experienced both greatness and downfall, and his story offers profound lessons for our lives today. Solomon began his reign under promising circumstances. As the son of David and Bathsheba, he was chosen by God to ascend to the throne of Israel. From the beginning, he was marked by divine favor and guidance. In the first book of Kings, chapter 3, verse 5, it is recorded how the Lord appeared to him in a dream and offered to grant him whatever he asked. Unlike many, Solomon did not ask for wealth, long life, or the defeat of his enemies, but for something that would define his legacy. Give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. 1 Kings 3:9. God was greatly pleased with Solomon's request. In response, he granted him not only unparalleled wisdom, but also riches, honor, and a long life, as long as Solomon remained faithful to God's commandments. From that moment, Solomon's wisdom became evident to all Israel and beyond. A notable example of his divine discernment is found in the famous story of the two women who both claimed to be the mother of the same child. Rather than making a rash decision, Solomon suggested dividing the child in two, knowing that the true mother would rather give up her claim than see her child die. This event, recorded in 1 Kings 3:16-28, demonstrated the deep understanding that God had given him. Solomon's wisdom not only attracted the admiration of his people, but also that of foreign rulers. The Queen of Sheba, for example, traveled great distances to test his wisdom with difficult questions. In 1 Kings 10:6-7, she expressed her amazement by saying, "The report I heard in my own country about your achievements and your wisdom is true, but not even half was told to me." This encounter highlighted not only God's blessing on Solomon, but also the favor God extended to the entire nation of Israel under his leadership. One of Solomon's greatest achievements was the construction of the temple in Jerusalem, a task his father David had longed to accomplish. Solomon's temple, described in 1 Kings 6, was an architectural marvel. It took 7 years to complete and became the spiritual center of Israel, a place where the presence of God dwelled among his people. In 1 Kings 8:10-11, it is described how, upon the temple's completion, the glory of the Lord filled the place in a tangible manifestation of his presence. However, Solomon's story also serves as a testimony of how even the most blessed and wise men can stray when they do not fully obey God. Despite his wisdom, Solomon became entangled in the temptations of power, wealth, and influence. The king who had everything began to compromise his faith for political alliances and marriages with foreign women. These marriages were not mere political strategies. They were direct violations of God's command. In 1 Kings 11:1-2, it tells us that Solomon loved many foreign women, including Moabites, Ammonites, and Edomites, from nations the Lord had specifically warned Israel not to marry into. This was a turning point in Solomon's downfall. Throughout his life, he accumulated 700 wives and 300 concubines, 1 Kings 11:3. His heart was led astray, and his loyalty to God wavered. Despite all his wisdom, Solomon allowed his love for his foreign wives to surpass his devotion to God. This led him to build altars and places of worship for pagan gods, which was a blatant violation of divine mandates. In 1 Kings 11:4, it says, "As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods." Solomon erected altars for gods such as Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Moloch, the god of the Ammonites, whose worship involved abominable practices like child sacrifice. These actions were not mere gestures of cultural tolerance. They were direct violations of God's law, who had instructed Israel to destroy the high places dedicated to foreign gods. Deuteronomy 12:2-3. Solomon's disobedience was particularly tragic, given the level of wisdom and blessing he had received. God's judgment on Solomon was swift. In 1 Kings 11:9-10, it is written, "The Lord became angry with Solomon, because his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice." God had clearly warned him to remain faithful, but Solomon did not listen. As a result, God pronounced severe judgment on him and his kingdom, declaring that the kingdom would be divided after his death. Solomon's story serves as a powerful warning about the dangers of turning away from God, even for those who seem to have everything. His life is a testament to how wisdom without obedience can lead to spiritual ruin. Though he began his reign with a close relationship with God, he ended by saying, "Everything is meaningless." Ecclesiastes 1:2, acknowledging that, in the end, nothing in this world can compare to true communion with God. What can we learn from Solomon? His story teaches us that wisdom, power, and riches are not enough to sustain us if our hearts do not remain focused on God. It shows us that temptation and pride can lead us to make decisions that pull us away from the Lord's ways. Throughout Solomon's life, we see how small compromises can grow into massive deviations from God's will. It is a warning for us today in a world full of distractions and temptations. What is preventing us today from having a full relationship with God? What worldly desires are pulling us away from His will? Like Solomon, we are all vulnerable to external influences, but his story reminds us to be vigilant in our decisions and steadfast in our faith. If you find Solomon's story inspiring, remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel. These biblical accounts are not just meant to inform us, but to transform our lives, offering us timeless lessons that guide us toward a deeper relationship with God.